So for this game, it looks like we're actually going to keep an all-creature hand. Not a lot of interaction, but powerful creatures. So we have multiple 2-drops essentially in Hangerback and Mimic, and then some late game spells. It looks like our opponent might be on some sort of Mardu deck. So we have a decision here. Do we want to play Hangerback or Mimic? I actually want to play the Hangerback because on our next turn we can then level the Hangerback plus play Mimic, which seems like a better use of our mana than playing Mimic this turn. And then next turn it's basically just a 2-1. Okay, so Mardu Green, maybe what we're playing against. That would be what would make the most sense in the spot. But we'll just proceed with our game plan as outlined. And then the Mimic should become a 4/4. So it's actually a legitimate threat here. And our opponent is going to roast it, which is pretty annoying. So is the Sylvan Advocate. So yeah, that's a pretty good turn for our opponent. But at least we'll be able to look at what we're up against here with this Thought Knot. So definitely going to take Goblin Dark Dwellers, but the second Sylvan Advocate is also pretty annoying because they're going to become 4/5s in 2 turns. And our opponent also has lands, so Nissa's going to get flipped pretty soon. And yeah, just double checking. We did, in fact, take Goblin Dark Dwellers there. But, yep, that kind of happens. You take the card, then all of a sudden they peel on you. So, really bad news. But at the same time, what can you do? Sometimes it just happens. So I think we have an interesting spot. We can play Bear, make our opponent sack a dude, but I kind of just want to play this Thought Knot because we know our opponent at least has one more spell in another Sylvan Advocate. Ooh, there's another Nissa. So what to do now? Do we take the Nissa? Or do we take the Sylvan Advocate? Nissa's really very annoying. So is Sylvan Advocate. Shoot. Let's take the Advocate. Gamble a little bit that if our opponent flips Nissa, we can get in a Reality Smasher hit to take it out. And our opponent already has one Nissa in play. The Advocates are pretty hard to attack past, but we're definitely not loving this position we're in right now. And it looks like a Crackling Doom is going to get rid of our Thought Knot. So if our opponent attacks... Wow, okay, this is a weird attack. I guess since our opponent has a second copy of Nissa, maybe they're willing to throw away this one. But yeah, I think we want to just get rid of it. And then the question becomes, do we want to level the Hanger back up? I think the answer is yes. Another reason to do that is we do have a Bearer of Silence, which we may want to play on our next turn. We're still very far behind. We know our opponent has a land that they just got from Nissa. So, I think we have to play Bearer onto this board. So let's go ahead and do that. Not loving the spot, but yeah, we're just going to play Bearer, make our opponent sack a guy. And it's going to be the Nissa. Alright. Well, we may just die this turn. Abzan Charm to take out the Hanger back. Seems very bad for us. It looks like we're forced into a chump block now. Except we can't block with the bear, obviously, because it can't block. So, yep, alright. We are dead. Officially dead that game. I don't think there was anything we could have done. Bear is a 2-1 flyer that couldn't block in that spot, so we were pretty much just dead in a couple different ways. So let's look at the sideboard. We're playing against Mardu Green. Kalitas seems okay. Ruinous Path seems okay. I think we want the self-inflicted wounds for sure. And we probably want to board in Kalitas. Grasp seems fine. I don't think we want Warping Whale for sure. Want Transgress, so let's board in Transgress. We're boarding in Self-Inflicted Wound. Eldrazi Mimic kind of just died that game. Wasn't that impressive. Kalitas feels like it could be good, so we can board in a couple of those. A couple of Ruinous Paths. And maybe some Duresses. So I think we can go ahead and play a more spell-heavy deck. Maybe take out some of our Smashers and Mimics because they die to a lot of our opponent's removal. And then play more of a discard and then Kalitas game plan. Because obviously that game 1 matchup, I mean, we know it's bad. Like, we just saw what happened. It's a bad matchup for us game 1. And so we're going to try to reconfigure our deck a little bit for game 2 here. And not a bad opening hand. Bearer is nice because it's a threat we can play on turn 2, and we can also use it as an edict effect, and our opponent has a lot of nice edict targets, so I don't know that we even want to run it out here. And we drew Transgress, so yeah, let's just go ahead and fire the Transgress. And our opponent's got a pretty interesting hand. Triple Siege Rhino, Outpost Siege, Murderous Cut, Bloodstained Mire. So, yeah, that's a pretty good hand, except that our opponent doesn't have many lands, which would lead me to want to take the Nissa. We can probably Thought Knot something else away. So, kind of leaning towards Nissa, but it's close. Alright. Yeah, I mean, we're going to let our opponent have 3 copies of Siege Rhino. That's a lot of Siege Rhinos. So, just kind of going to have to try to conserve our life total here. And we can hold on to these bearers because they essentially can trade off with the Rhinos. And then we're probably going to want to Thought Knot the Outpost Siege, actually, because that card can just take over the game completely, whereas the Siege Rhinos we can answer 1 for 1. Yeah, so wow, okay. Double removal spell and Absent Charm and Murderous Cut, plus Outpost Siege, triple Siege Rhino. It's a really good hand. Let's take the Siege. Yeah, I think we still have to take the Siege. But our opponent's got so much gas in hand. Hopefully we'll be able to overcome it. That's a lot of spells we have to deal with, and it's pretty likely our opponent could either play a Rhino, which we actually want our opponent to play a Rhino rather than play a removal spell here, but it looks like our opponent is maybe going to play a removal spell here. What's it going to be? Absent Charm. And we just have to kind of take that on the chin, and we'll just play a little bit of a waiting game. Unfortunately, we didn't draw a blighted land, which would be good here. And so just kind of holding these bears for the Rhinos we know our opponent has. It's pretty interesting our opponent passed with 4 mana there. And Transgress is a complete brick. So Yeah, it's been a weird sequence from our opponent. I mean, I can understand not wanting to play rhinos out into these bears, but probably shouldn't have played that swamp because our opponent already knew about this Llanowar Waste, but whatever. Matter Shaper is a good draw here, so let's definitely go ahead and play that one. And it's kind of a game of cat and mouse here. Pretty interesting game. So, Goblin Dark Dwellers. It's gonna get Abzan Charm. That is pretty annoying. So Abzan Charm. Is our opponent gonna use it to draw 2 or? Nope, not draw 2. Instead, attempt to take care of this Matter Shaper. So we can either gain a life, or we could Spatial Contortion our own creature to get the Reshaper trigger. I don't think that's necessary here, so yeah, let's just go ahead and gain 1. Fortunately, we don't get the trigger though because it's exiled. Ooh, okay, Hangerback Walker. That's actually a very good draw here. As far as we know, our opponent doesn't have ways to exile our stuff in hand, so I kinda am leaning towards just simply playing the Hangerback Walker for 4 here. Let's try it. We don't. Yeah, I think it's correct. We know our opponent has Murderous Cut and 3 Siege Rhinos, but we know of no way that our opponent actively wants to get rid of this Hangerback Walker. And next turn we could play 2 copies of Bearer of Silence if we want to. So yeah, no blocks. Can't block that one. It has Menace. And there's a Rhino. So this is going to be a good turn for us, actually. And we drew Kalidas, which would be really good, except our opponent has Murderous Cup mana up with Vent and Windswept Heath. So rather than running out Kalidas here, I think we just want to continue on with the Bearer plan. Yep. So we're going to play Bearer, and we would like to make you sacrifice a dude, please. And our opponent doesn't have mana up so that they can activate their man lands. So yeah, we're just going to double Bear here. If our opponent has something like a mass removal spell, that's what would hurt us more than anything here, because it looks like potentially Murderous Cut is going to be used on our Hangerback, which would mean if something like Chandra were to come down, we'd probably just lose the game. Hopefully we don't. Okay, our opponent's actually Murderous Cutting one of our bears, so that's pretty good news, I think. And I think we want to go ahead and get in for 4. Yeah, let's do it. Our opponent could attack us back with something like Needle Spires. But probably is just going to play... Yep, there's another Rhino. Okay. So, Grasp of Darkness, that's a pretty good draw. We know our opponent has another copy of Siege Rhino in hand. So we've got a couple of options here. Let's go ahead and play Kalidas out. We're definitely going to want to attack with Bear, and the question is if we want to attack with this Hangerback as well. I don't think we do, so yeah, let's just attack in with the Bear of Silence, and then we have Hangerback back for blocks if we want it. Looks like maybe our opponent has some removal spell for this Kalitas here. Okay, no, it's actually Colligan's Command. Well, alright. I guess we're going to let that happen. Not too much we can do about it. It is pretty annoying because our opponent is getting back Goblin Dark Dwellers and can use the Dark Dwellers to get something else back. If we wanted to, we could spend both of our removal spells to get rid of the Siege Rhino, but it doesn't really seem worth it at this point. So pretty unfortunate. Yeah, so there is another Siege Rhino. So yeah, let's just go ahead and gain our life. And we know our opponent has a Dark Dwellers in hand. That's a pretty good draw, actually. Ruinous Path. Probably just want to go ahead and fire that one off with Awaken. So let's go ahead and try it on a Rhino. Hopefully it works out and we will get a token off our Kalitas. If not, it's going to be annoying, but that it does work. So if we want to get in there with Kalitas, with Hangerback Walker, we can. Or we can just play a little bit of a weighted game and make our Hangerback into a 6/6, which also seems pretty reasonable. So yeah, I think we can afford to wait one more turn to attack and just play a little bit more conservatively. Looks like the Goblin Dark Dwellers is going to come down here. And interesting, our opponent's going to get the Colligan's Command. So it'll be interesting to see what modes are used with the command. Return a creature and 2 damage to our token. Okay. And we're going to make our Hangerback now into a 6/6. So, legitimate threat, this Hangerback Walker. And we also have Grasp of Darkness to take care of the Goblin Dark Dwellers. So, I think we want to just go ahead and Grasp right now. So we make sure that happens the way we want it to. Okay, we are going to get the zombie token. And so now we can actually get in there with Kalitas because we have the token. We can sack it to make our Kalitas bigger. So I kind of like getting in there with both of these creatures here. Interesting. Our opponent is actually blocking here. That could be a bad sign, but I think we have to proceed with our original plan. So, yep. And looks like this is going to turn out the way we want it to. Yep, okay, that's actually not bad for us. Our Hangerback is about to get Crackling Doomed here. So that's fine. We get six tokens. The Rhino dies, we get another zombie token. We can play Mirror Pool, and let's just go ahead and gain a bunch of life. And now we're basically in a spot where our opponent is essentially dead without some Wrath of God type effect. We know our opponent has another Rhino. Okay, Crackling Doom finally takes care of our Kalitas, but at this point, it's probably too little too late. So, yeah. Oh, and there's a Ruinous Path, another Ruinous Path, to take care of the Rhino. And we can just put it on a different creature. So yeah, it looks like our sideboard plan is working out perfectly, actually. And we're basically threatening the win next turn. So yeah, I like this attack. It's a nice aggressive attack. Not too worried about the crackback here. Looks like our opponent's gonna dig one last time, and we actually got there this time around. So managed to force a game 3. Sigh of relief. Things worked out pretty well. Our opponent had a stack of spells to play, stack of rhinos, but we managed to work through it. So do we want to change anything? I kind of like taking out the Mimics and the Smashers. The Smashers just die to Crackling Doom in a way that we don't really want to have happen. And then Mimics just trade for like 2 damage from Colligan's Command, which isn't really a profitable trade for us. We might actually want to board out some Spatial Contortions. Maybe just one. I mean, we saw Sylvan Advocate, which Contortion is nice against. Although we might actually rather have Ultimate Price. Though Spatial Contortion does get rid of Shambling Vents. Yeah, let's put in 1 price. And yeah, a couple small switches for game 3. I'm not really sure how important they are. Ruinous Path, we're definitely not putting that one out. We have it in our opener. Pretty land-heavy hand. But I think in this matchup, we have to keep. So the lands can become pretty relevant if the game goes long like game 2 did. We have a way to deal with this Advocate. And Bear is a nice one, as we already realized. It's a card we actively really want to draw. So, yep, we're just going to go ahead and deal with that Advocate. And we essentially have 2 more removal spells with Ruinous Path and Bear of Silence. And it also looks like our opponent missed a land drop. So that's not bad news, although it does mean likely our opponent's sitting on like something like Nissa and a bunch of spells. So could be a long game filled with our opponent playing tough to deal with cards. But let's go ahead and try out a Transgress here. Alright, Infinite Obliteration, Colligan's Command, Fiery Impulse, Absent Charm, Crackling Doom, and Nissa. Wow. Whew. What a hand. What do we want to take? Nissa gets our opponent another land. Don't think we want to take Crackling Doom. Absent Charm can draw our opponent cards or get rid of this Mana Reshaper. And I think the Reshaper is really good here. So we may just want to take the Absent Charm. We could also take Colligan's Command. Colligan's Command can deal with our Bearer, make us discard a card. Yeah, alright. Let's take the Colligan's Command. Let's try that. I think it's really close between all those cards. A lot of them, at least. But yeah, I think we want to get rid of the Colligan's Command. If our opponent plays Nissa this turn, we can play our Bearer. So, pretty interesting. It might be that our opponent Infinite Obliteration's Bearer of Silence, which would be bad for us. Yeah, okay, that is going to happen, but I don't know. I mean, we could have just ran out the Bearer this turn, but that's kind of a gamble. So, I don't know. I don't mind the line we took, but it is definitely bad for us that this Infinite Obliteration has taken our Bears away. It also means our opponent's taking the turn off, though, to cast this Infinite Obliteration. So, I don't know if it's good or bad for us. It's probably bad for us overall, but I also don't know that we can just play out our bear as just a 2-1 in that spot. So, yeah, we'll proceed on. Gonna go ahead and activate this tomb. We know our opponent could Absent Charm away this Reshaper. And we'll see if that's what's going to happen here. Okay, it is going to happen, actually. So, yeah, that's fine. And Thought Knot Seer is our draw step. So, we definitely want to just play the Thought Knot. I think, yeah, let's go ahead and play the Thought Knot here. Really interesting game again. And we'll see. Our opponent's only got 3 cards. One is a Crackling Doom, which is the one we want to take because it just kills our Thought Knot straight away. And we have Spatial Contortion, which can deal with the Nissa. And Fiery Impulse here is not doing a whole lot. It's not bad, but it's also it's going to take some work for that Impulse to end up being very good here. So, Nissa, yeah, let's just go ahead and, well, we can wait for our opponent to find the forest before we're going to Spatial Contortion this, but we can also take a draw step, but to draw into a land for Ruinous Path, but I think this is actually better, so we'll Contortion that away. And we actually drew a second Thought Knot, which is quite nice. So I actually like our spot still, even though the bear was Infinite Obliteration, which was definitely not good. But we're still actually ahead at this point. Especially with this second Thought Knot. Our opponent has a Fiery Impulse, which doesn't do anything at all. Colligan's Command. Okay, that's actually not bad because it makes us discard our Ruinous Path. And we have to take the Sylvan Advocate now, leaving our opponent with just Fiery Impulse. So essentially a top deck war. That is bad news for us. Yes, it's true we have Blighted Fen in play, but we can't effectively use it because then our opponent can activate Shambling Vent. But if our opponent does activate Shambling Vent, then this becomes a 2-3. So actually, now that I've fully thought about this, we definitely want to Blighted Fen our opponent here. And this seems great for us. Was thinking our opponent can activate a Shambling Vent to save themselves, but since they only have 6 lands total, the Shambling Vent gets binned, and then this becomes a 2-3. So a little bit of an interesting interaction that really works in our favor, and now our opponent's forced into a chump block situation. So, yeah. Fiery Impulse is actually going to be able to trade with a Thought Knot, but at least we get the Advocate out of the way, and it looks like, yep, alright, we got there, so, sweet.